Hello and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Kukuletu Cele. Retiring is something that we all look forward to, but how many of us actually plan for it? Tonight I'm joined from our Cape Town studios by Stephen Nathan, Chief Executive of 10X Investments, who's going to tell us why retirement planning should form part of employee benefit policies. Stephen, good to have you with us this evening. Let's hope that you don't piss off too many employers, but walk us through this particular concept, because I take it a lot of South Africans who are employed actually think that this does form part of their employee benefits.
Yes, Gugu, the employer can play a very important role in helping their employees to save very effectively for retirement. And if the employers choose not to do that, or if they don't pay enough attention, then it can materially impact their employees' lives when they're no longer working. So if the employees take the effort to do a little bit of work, the results and the impact they can have on their employees' lives when they stop working can be transformational.
What kind of extra work does this entail, Stephen?
Well, most companies in South Africa, and certainly the larger ones, already have a retirement fund in place, and they certainly talk a lot about employee wellness and employee benefits. But in order to be a benefit, you have to add value, more value than if the employee was doing it on their own. So they just need to educate themselves a little bit in terms of what does a sensible retirement plan look like. They need to try and get providers that can give objective value-added advice both to the employer and the employee, and just encourage people to save more money, to invest for longer periods of time, and to try and focus on maximizing the long-term returns rather than trying to worry about what the stock market does today or what a certain fund manager did yesterday. So really just apply sensible long-term investment principles to maximize what they're going to get out of their company retirement fund.
I take it, let's start with the first step, where you mentioned that the participation of companies like yourselves, 10X Investments, where you provide calculators as well as updated skills to do individual analysis of consumers when it comes to their retirement needs, obviously comes into play here. What about the responsibility that's also posed on the employee here, Stephen?
Well, without a doubt, ultimately we are in a so-called defined contribution environment, which means that the employee actually is on their own. If they choose to ignore their retirement savings, if they don't invest sensibly, if they don't pay attention to fees, then they bear all the bad outcomes that will be associated with that behavior. Conversely, if they do right things, then they're going to benefit. So they need to be aware of this, but often people ignore retirement, certainly when they're in their 20s and 30s, and they only look at it when it's too late, and it's really too late to materially impact your outcome. So it's really a partnership. It's a partnership between the employer and the employees, and also between the service providers that are going to be providing the services, managing their retirement funds, administrating, providing the communication, and as you mentioned, the tools to help people make informed decisions, because South Africans have very little idea about retirement savings, and as a consequence we have tremendously high failure rates, because quite frankly you have a very large industry that is standing between you and your money, and quite often they're putting their interest well ahead of the employees' interests.
Stephen, you also allude to saving the right amount and obviously increasing these contributions when you can. But many South African employees simply say that 15% recommended minimum is just not enough, or rather that they don't actually have that money available given the circumstances and the financial responsibilities that they have to face. Are there other plans that they can put in place here, Stephen?
Well, 15% is the recommended number. So there's a few things to realize over here. The one is that if you are contributing 15%, because you get a tax deduction, your take-home pay won't reduce by 15%. So you're getting effectively a tax-free or a government subsidy to encourage you to save. Secondly, you don't have to get 15% on the first day, but you should try and aim to increase that. So one of the ways to do it is to start off at a lower rate, but commit to, let's say, increase that by 1 or 2% per year every time you have a salary increase. It's called Save More Tomorrow. So there are ways people can do it, and also we need to learn as South Africans not only to live within our means, but probably to live beneath our means, because I think what we think our means are, what we really need to get by on, it's probably a lot less. The other alternative is this: just accept that you're not going to have as comfortable a retirement as you otherwise would have.
Stephen, something else a lot of South African consumers tend to do is have various kind of retirement planning instruments. So they might have a pension fund and augment that with a retirement annuity. Is this advisable, especially with the trend of tax-free savings accounts that have now come on board?
It's not necessarily advisable. I mean, I think there's probably 3 points here. The first point is that people should not be investing large amounts if they don't really understand the basic principles of investing. And that's something we try and encourage people to do, because you have to save as much as you can, but equally important is you have to maximize the return on those savings. Because let me give you a simple example, is if you pay 1% too much in fees, then you have to save 30% more than you would otherwise have to. So before you commit large amounts to savings, empower yourself, educate yourself to make sure you're getting the best value for those savings. The second thing is, you should try and maximize your retirement savings because it's tax-free. So you can contribute tax-free into a retirement fund, and the limit there at the moment is anywhere between 15 and 27%. So it's quite a generous limit. Once you've done that and you can tick the box that you've saved adequately for your retirement, then you should definitely look at other forms of savings. And as you mentioned, the tax-free saving, that is an incentive. However, the tax benefits are much less than you would get in a retirement fund. You can also contribute far less. You can only contribute a maximum of 30,000 tax-free per year, whereas in a retirement fund it's open-ended. Although you do have more flexibility on the tax-free saving side. So there are pros and cons to both, but the most important point is understand how to get the most value for your retirement savings before you commit to saving, because you can save a lot, but you're not going to get the full value because you might be investing in poorly performing portfolios, the wrong portfolios, or paying high fees.
I'm happy you touched on the investment strategy, because a lot of South Africans do tend to be conservative, even though they do have the right time allowance in order to be quite aggressive with their strategies. Is this also something that the employers, together with the employees, need to look at when looking at the right kind of retirement investment product for them?
Your investment strategy is critical. As I said, if you're in the wrong investment strategy, which probably about half of South Africans actually are unknowingly, is that you're going to just earn much lower long-term returns, and that means you're going to have much less, or you're going to need to contribute probably double what you otherwise would have to have the same outcome. And there's very little understanding in South Africa of investment risk, because investment risk to a retirement saver is the risk that at retirement their retirement fund is too low. So quite simple is that the return you've earned over your retirement savings period is too low, therefore you don't have enough money. That is your investment risk. However, most people in South Africa think investment risk is if the stock market goes down by 1 or 2% in the day. So they're much more focused on the short-term volatility and returns of stock markets, and they're making a long-term decision based upon what happens in the short run. And they've got a complete mismatch. So as you said, people, they think they're being conservative because they don't want to experience too many ups and downs in the short run, but really they're being reckless in the long run, because most of their portfolios net of fees will barely keep up with inflation if you invest based on conservative portfolios or guaranteed portfolios, or in any way where you try and smooth out the short run.
Stephen, let's pick up on past mistakes that might have been made. How does an employee ensure that they can calculate whether or not they're still on the right track with regard to their retirement savings? Are these tools available?
Yes, so on our website, and I think on other companies' website, there are free tools available. The important point about the tools is that they must have realistic projections. A lot of the tools ask the employee to input assumptions about interest rates and inflation rates and returns, and quite frankly they have no idea, because this is a very specialist field. So you need to ensure that the calculator you use has sensible projections. And then what you do is, on our website you'd go and you'd put your details. There's even a guide that explains what these fields mean. You might not know what salary or your contribution rate or investment portfolio, so there's a guide to explain it. And then what would happen is you'd get an output, and it would say you're on track to receive X amount in rand terms, and you could secure an income of X amount for so many years in your retirement. And then you can flex it. You can say, well, that sounds too low. What can I do to improve it? And typically what you can do is you can either save more, you can change your portfolio, so you could go for a more aggressive, we don't say higher risk, because in the long run it's actually not high risk. You might want to reduce your fees. So at least when you know what you're realistically expecting to get, you can start to see what variables can I positively impact that can help me get more money at retirement.
Stephen, in a nutshell, the key takeaway points from this evening's discussion for viewers at home?
Well, I think that the onus is on all of us to take care of our retirement provision. We do hope that employers will facilitate this. We do hope that employers will pick the right providers, the right investment managers, the right administrators, but we can't rely on that because most South Africans actually are doing a really bad job. Most South Africans, the providers they are with are very expensive. A lot of the portfolios are underperforming the indices. So we have to empower ourselves. We have to educate ourselves and take control of ourselves because we bear 100% of the outcomes at retirement. And if we're not going to take a certain amount of responsibility today, then there's going to be no one to fall back on when we do retire.
Stephen, just to close off with, does this also highlight the need for an ongoing communication between the employee as well as the employer on what exactly their benefits entail, especially when it comes to retirement?
That's exactly correct. You know, we go to companies and often the employee has no idea if they have a fund in place, even if they have insurance benefits in place. So it's as I said earlier, it's a relationship, and a relationship is a two-way street. So the employer must facilitate the communication, but the employee also mustn't be apathetic. And I think the industry relies on the employer and the investors being apathetic, so they never pay any attention to what's going on. So this communication is vital, and we need to become much more empowered so we take more ownership and get much better deals for ourselves.
Stephen, thank you so much for your insights to this evening. That's where we leave it for Personal Finance tonight. A big thank you to Stephen Nathan, CEO of 10X Investments. Remember that we want to hear from you, so continue to send us your feedback and thoughts. Tweet them to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410 or to myself @Gukumfupi. Until next time, it's goodbye.